can do so now.
Yeah, it looks like I'm good and it's recording.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Nice. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing today?
Good. Hanging out in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Okay, nice. I'm in Plymouth, Michigan.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
What is that near like one of the universities, or what's like the closest big city, I guess?
Yeah, so I'm about 30 minutes from Detroit and Ann Arbor. So,
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah.
Nice. And are you in school, out of school? What's your status?
Yeah, I am actually in my master's program at Central Michigan University.
Oh,
I
cool.
did my undergrad and graduated in 2018. Took a couple years into the real world, and now I'm back at college. So, yeah.
Nice. I'm sure that's fun.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
cool.
good journey.
And did you do undergrad at Central Michigan as well?
I actually did, yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah. I went to Penn State University, so
right.
I always think of Michigan State and Michigan, but I feel like a lot of people are aware of Central Michigan as well.
Yeah, I feel like we're kind of like one of those hidden smaller gems, but
Hmm.
great university and maybe not so much it with sports. I know Big Ten football is a real fun time for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets I don't know, it's cool. I feel like whenever I meet another person from a Big Ten school, I feel like there's always like some natural connection there because
Yeah.
I feel like I easily could have gone to like Ohio State or
Ooh, don't
Michigan.
mention Ohio State.
Yeah, yeah, they're the rival, but I'm
Yeah,
like the culture is
right,
very similar.
for
Yeah,
sure.
but
That's
it
awesome.
didn't. J.J. Watt and Antonio Brown go to Central Michigan.
Yeah, so JJ Watt did, and one of my business professors actually taught JJ Watt when he was at Central. And
Oh,
then
really?
yeah, and that was back when he was like a tight end. And then he transferred to Wisconsin, went D-line and everything. And then Antonio Brown, he he was just a wide receiver there the whole time. But yeah, he did go.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's awesome. Yeah, and how did you find my project? Did you say you had a friend who told you about it?
Yeah, so I just started a podcast. I've been working on it since like the middle of March, and I was just kind of chatting with people and just talking about my vision and my goals. And I was chatting with someone, and they're like, "Oh, hey, like that kind of sounds like something this guy Rob's doing. Have you heard of him?" And I was like, I haven't. So I looked up your Instagram, then just kind of like Googled about who you were. And I was like, oh, this sounds cool. And definitely like when I was reading about you and seeing your stuff, I was like, I feel like we have that same passion of connecting and getting to know people and just having that conversation. And I was like, all right, let's just reach out and see if he wants to chat. So that's how
Nice.
we're here.
Sweet. And yeah, so when did you start the podcast? Like tell me about it.
Yeah. So I started working on it like the middle of March, end of March, this past March, and it officially launched the last week of April. So this is week 3 now with it, and the podcast, it is basically about, it's organic, unedited, unscripted conversations with people. Each episode I bring on a guest and just chat with them, mainly about their passions, but at the same time just kind of give them a blank canvas where anything that they say is fair game. So whether that's life, mindset, their passion that they do for a career, their passion of like cooking that they just do on the weekends, whatever. So it's just been really cool. And honestly, like the conversations I've had, I feel very fortunate for. They've been life changing to me. And if I can share that with the world and it inspires, empowers, or even just entertains people, I feel like I'm doing what I love and hopefully making an impact.
Nice. Yeah, it's super similar to how I feel about things. I
Yeah.
was gonna say if you have any like structure, we could take like a certain block of our time to like satisfy your podcast needs, but it sounds like, and if you want to, we can, but it sounds like you treat things the way that I treat things. So
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's gonna flow perfectly.
yeah, that's cool. And what inspired you to start it?
I have been one of those people that kind of struggles with like what do I want to do when I grow up kind of thing. And I'm 25 right now. Um, but I always know I love people. I want to help people. I want to make an impact. So however I can do that. And I mean, I've written and published 3 books. Like I've done all these like creative endeavors, like creativity is my thing. So I was like, how can I do that? And I would just find myself having conversations with people I know, or just even like go to the store and talk to like the person bagging my groceries, and like just crazy things come out of it where I'm like, oh my God, like I wish other people could hear that. So that's really what led me to wanting to do it. And it's been a great journey so far.
Nice. And
Yeah.
you said it started in March, as in March of 2 months ago?
Yeah, 2 months ago, March is when I wanted to do it about a year and a half ago, and then with kind of the world shutting down and stuff, I just kind of lost the energy to do it, and I was like, I know people are more free maybe, but I kind of feel bad asking for people to take like an hour out of their life to talk to me when there's bigger things going on. So I put it on hold, and then this past March 2 months ago, I was like, let's do it.
Yeah.
I have the time, I have the energy, and that's when I kind of started recording and just getting everything set up. I have never done anything like that before, so just even learning how to do all that kind of stuff was a lot, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's cool. I've found through some of my conversations, because everything I started my project in November of 2015,
Right.
and then I was doing everything in person, and I never intended to do video calls because I was like, I want to be forced to go to other places and see
Yeah.
other cultures and stuff. And then obviously that didn't become possible last year. So I
Right.
shifted into virtual, and it's actually been like a big blessing in disguise of connecting with people here in the States or all across the world, and like learning about what's going on in their lives. Uh,
Definitely.
but sometimes people will hop on these calls with me, and they'll be like, "You're the first new person I've met in a year," and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Wow, it's crazy," because I've met over 1,000 people in the last year,
Yeah.
and it's just, for me, it's so normal to have these types of conversations. But it is wild to think, if I didn't have this project, I would be, I don't know what I would do.
Right.
I think back, like, if I studied finance at Penn State, and then I did
Mhm.
consulting for Deloitte. So, and then after that I did tech sales for a startup. But I was like, if I was still doing consulting, or if I was doing tech sales, the only thing that got me through those times was being able to go out on the weekends and interact with people. So if I didn't have that piece anymore, I don't know what I would have done. So I'm kind of happy that I was already in this path by the time the pandemic hit.
Yeah. That definitely makes sense, and that's awesome that you were, kind of given this platform and this new, I mean, not new because we've always had technology, right? But like
Mhm.
it's kind of pushed us to having to do it, and it's a great way to connect, and it's so cool to, say like, oh, I just talked to someone across the world and, a whole different country or, different background just because of how wild technology is these days.
Yeah, very fortunate. I think we all are, for the time that we live in. Like, I don't know
For sure.
what life would have looked like if we didn't have the platforms that we have.
Right.
Yeah. So where are you from, Plymouth originally then?
Yeah, well, so technically, I was actually born in South Korea.
Okay.
I was adopted at 3 months old, and then I came to Plymouth, and I've been living here since then. So pretty
Okay.
much, but technically,
Yeah.
no. Yeah.
That's why I just talked to a girl yesterday who was adopted from South Korea when she was 6 months old.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah, and she just wrote a children's book on her story of adoption, and then
Oh,
it's
that's
different
awesome.
for everyone, I know. But she was talking about, like, her parents always celebrated, like, the fact that she was adopted and her gotcha day and whatnot, and they would send her brothers adopted from South Korea as well, and they
Okay.
would like send them to school with like cupcakes and stuff on this day. Um, so she created this children's book to be like, I wasn't like crazy different. I was just like someone else who, I still have this family here, and it was very normal for us.
Right.
And like wanted to, I guess, increase that representation for other kids who maybe didn't feel like they had a children's book like that.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah,
You know the title of it off the top of your head?
it's called Adopting Posey.
Okay.
I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I can send you her post. I just posted about her yesterday.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely sounds like an awesome thing that she's doing, and I'd love to check it out and
yeah.
support.
So is like your family? Do you have siblings at all? Do you still have both of your parents?
Yeah, so, both my parents, I have 3 siblings, all much older, never grew up with them. They live out of state, they live in Tennessee, and, one of my sisters actually passed a few years back, but yeah, 3 siblings, all older, um, never really grew up with them though, so kinda had that, like, only child
Mhm.
lifestyle, but, still family nonetheless.
Yeah, I have heard that from people that I've met with who have a break between them and their siblings,
Mhm.
and they'd say it's like I guess it's like a hybrid, like the only
Right,
child. Yeah,
for
but
sure. What about
how? Oh,
oh,
I have 2 siblings, so I'm 30, and then
Okay.
I have a brother who will be 32 next week, and then a sister who will be 36 in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, and we're all pretty close. My sister lives like 5 minutes down the road from my parents in the Philly
Okay.
area, so
Okay.
she lives with her husband and their 9-month-old son. Um,
Awesome.
and then my brother lives in New York City with his wife. And
Okay.
all three of us went to Penn State. My sister studied marketing, my brother studied finance, and then I studied finance. But we all also had like very different paths during our time there.
Gotcha. So is like Penn State something that's in the family? Like other
It
than you and your siblings?
it became something that was in the family once my sister went there.
Okay.
My dad was actually supposed to go there, so if you look at his high school yearbook, when people signed it, they said like "Good luck at Penn State."
Okay.
But then after he graduated, he got a scholarship to St. Joe's, which is like a
Okay.
small school in Philly,
Yeah.
and so he went there instead. But he had friends that went to Penn State.
Okay.
So yeah, super interesting. I just remember when my sister went there, my dad was like, "Oh, they have this like very traditional football team, like the basic blues, like no names on the backs."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, we can start watching their games." So we would just watch them because my sister was a student there and she was involved in a dance company. So we would go up to campus like once a year for a game and then once a year to see her like dance performance in the spring.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. And then when she graduated, my brother entered and then he and I overlapped for 2 years. So
Okay.
there was for 10 consecutive years, one of us was a student at Penn State. And I think
Awesome.
last year, because of COVID, was the first year since I was in seventh grade that I didn't go back to Penn State for a game or something like that.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. But that's so
Mhm.
cool that, like it's been something that's kind of brought the family together for you. And, are like kind of athletics something that's big for you or a big passion for you or your family?
They are now. I
Okay.
like I mean I played sports all when I was younger. When I was in grade school, I did soccer, basketball, and track and field, so just all 3 seasons.
Okay.
And then when I got to high school, I focused on soccer.
Okay.
But I also started to shift more into like extracurriculars. So I worked part time throughout high school. I was working at Chick-fil-A when I was 14. Like that was my first job.
Okay.
And it was just like the summer going into high school and then weekends and stuff. And then I stopped for a bit and then I went back that summer. Then I started working at a financial firm just as like a secretary, like a local office. And I would do like filing papers and stuff after school a couple days a week.
Okay.
And yeah, I did like student council. I also played golf for 2 years, but I was terrible, so I don't really count that.
Okay.
Um, and what else did I do? Like National Honor Society
Yeah.
and Community Service Corps, it's just another community service club.
Okay.
And then when I got to Penn State, I shifted like fully into academics slash extracurriculars.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And now it's like I'm a big Philly sports fan. Like all Philly sports I follow. Like my Instagram explore section is
Mhm.
all like Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, like uh, Eagles news or Joel Embiid and Sixers news. So
Awesome.
I say I'm a bigger fan now because I used to pay attention to mainly the Eagles and I would just kind of check in on the other three, but
Okay.
now I'm more in tune with all of them and a little bit more interested in the strategy behind everything.
Okay. Awesome. Is there like a favorite sport if you had to pick at this point?
Definitely football.
Football
Yeah,
still? Okay.
yeah.
Eagles are a
In the
good team.
yeah, they used to be. They're rebuilding now, but the when it's football season, it's always like, and we're not in a pandemic. Um, like every Saturday, I'm either with my family or friends watching Penn State, and
Okay.
then every Sunday, it's like watching the Eagles, and then having Red Zone on in the background for fantasy, which I play like in a league with some of my old fraternity brothers.
Okay.
Yeah. How about
Very
you? Is
cool.
that like a passion for you?
Sports, yeah, I grew up playing so many sports. I mean, like I played soccer, kind of hated it. I have really flat feet, so running
Okay.
was not fun growing up.
Mhm.
So like I left soccer. I fell in love with baseball. Baseball and basketball were the two sports that I was playing. Um, I also bowled for a little bit, which is kind of random, and golfed for a little bit. But
Nice.
like you, golf was not my thing, so I don't really count that.
Yeah.
But yeah, with basketball, I was one of those kids that like I was pretty tall in like fourth, fifth grade, and then sixth grade happens, and then like I don't think I've grown since then.
Okay.
So like everyone else is getting taller. So basketball kind of stopped because of height. Like right now I'm 5'4", so
Okay.
that's like I maxed out at a young age. So no
Yeah.
NBA dreams for me. But
Yeah.
baseball was always what I loved. Um, Favorite sport, played it all the time, and then just being young, we think our bodies are invincible and we don't have to, rest and take care of it. So I battled some injuries with like my elbow and ankle, which took me out of the sport. So, I still love it. I still watch it. I'll watch sports and follow it a lot. Pretty much all sports I'm into. I I'm a Detroit sports fan, so as you probably know, it can be a little lonely, miserable time here
Yeah.
with their teams, especially the Lions. But Darius Slay, though, he got a good one in Slay and the Eagles
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so big sports fan. I just think it's so cool to watch people perform at such a high level and see how much skill and talent they actually have, and just like growing up as an athlete, knowing like it takes hours and hours of skill and time and practice to get to that level. So just like I think basketball is probably the sport that I've gotten into the most over the last like year, just because like I'll see people like pull off, like a move, um, or some sort of like dribble or make some shot, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like the skill that goes into that is just wild.
Yeah. Is it so are you a Pistons fan?
I am, yeah.
Okay. Was it Blake Griffin on the
He
Pistons?
was. Yeah, he was for a couple of years, and then he just was bought out, and now he's on the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah. I feel like I've seen like highlights of him dunking with the Nets and Pistons fans being like, what the heck? Where was that?
Exactly. Yeah, he didn't necessarily have that same maybe spunk to be
Okay.
in Detroit, but yeah, he kind of started dunking all over the place when he was in Brooklyn. I was like, whoa, we
Yeah.
didn't really get that Blake, but it was still cool to have him, and just having like a big name like that definitely made people more excited for the Pistons because they haven't really been that good in years. So
Hmm.
it was cool, but the Lions are a different story.
Yeah.
They're always kind of struggling, but as a
I'm
Lions fan, you're always hopeful.
Yeah, you have to be.
Yep.
I'm interested because Jared Goff is on my fantasy team, so
Okay.
I'm hoping he does well there. And yeah, the Eagles, I think it was this week, picked up on Johnson. So
Yeah.
uh, I've seen people be like, he's a talented player. He's just been injured. So hopefully he can do well for the Eagles. I mean, we have a pretty crowded backfield to begin with right
Right.
now, but he's like, I'm excited about him as well.
Yeah. I mean, I was a big fan of his in college at Auburn, and then when we drafted him a couple of years back. But yeah, the injuries definitely hurt. And then I know, like with drafting Swift the other year, I knew the Lions were kind of like moving on in a sense. But
Mhm.
I actually, I'm a big Jared Goff fan. I loved him since he came out of college, so I was really excited. I like Stafford. He was a great player and he was great for the team, but I was super happy that we got Goff. So I'm excited for him, and hopefully he'll do well for us, but also for you in fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't realize Stafford was so valued. Like
Yeah.
the trade, whatever they gave up for him, I was maybe was because he played for the Lions. I don't know if it was like he didn't have the right team around him or whatnot, but
Yeah, I think it was just not having the right team or the right opportunities, the right talent surrounding him, and then also like if you ever watched him play enough, like or just even caught like the highlights, a lot of people talked about like his throwing mechanics, like he'd like sidearm sling it a lot, and a lot of analysts and stuff just thought it would be either harmful to him, his like arm health, or just like kind of too reckless of a way
mhm,
to like approach the game. So I feel like he got a lot of kind of like I won't say hate, but just like overlooked. He flew under a lot of radars. But yeah, I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head, but we got like Goff and like a first round pick, a third round pick, and I think a couple other late round picks. So
mhm,
definitely huge value out of them.
yeah, yeah, it'd be cool.
Yeah.
And then, so what did you study at Central Michigan?
Yeah. So during my undergrad, I majored in psychology and minored in leadership and management. And now in my master's, I'm pursuing that in human resources and leadership.
Okay. What is it? Human resources and leadership?
Yep.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So again, kind of just going back to I love people, I love helping people. So that's where psychology came from.
Mhm.
I really found a passion for it in high school when I took AP psychology. So that really just resonated with me. I thought that was really cool. So going into Central in 2014, that's kind of where I was leaning. But I also had the mentality from a lot of people and just like also research online, like, oh, you'll never find a job if you major in psychology, or like you have to get a master's or whatever. And just like financially, I wasn't like really thinking about getting a master's. So that kind of scared me a little bit. And I actually first declared my major in economics, and I was so miserable. I hated it. I was like, econ's really cool in high school. I did really well in it. It looks like you could get some cool like analyst jobs in the business world, but I was just so miserable that I was like, it's not worth it. Like, it's not worth sacrificing my happiness just to make a lot of money or be successful or whatever. So I went back to psychology. Um, Always had the leadership minor, and then because I was going back into psychology, I was going to minor in psych while I majored in econ, majored in psych, and then I minored in management, so I could still kind of get that business feel. During undergrad, I ended up working with Kohl's
Mm,
department stores,
nice.
and I was doing their management programs. So I interned with them between my junior and senior year, just learning how to be a retail manager. And then my senior year, I was a brand ambassador for them. So basically recruiting for the internship that I did the previous year,
Mhm.
and just recruiting for my campus, but also throughout the whole Midwest, which was a really cool opportunity and led me to like that HR interest. So did that, and that's when I was like, okay, I really like the human resource aspect of like training, development, hiring, recruiting, interviewing, all that good stuff. So that's kind of where that passion came from. Graduated in 2018, already knowing that I had a job going back to Kohl's and stores. So did that for a little bit, and it was good. It was a lot of great experiences, but kind of got the idea that I love being a leader. I love leadership. I love helping people grow, but maybe retail's not necessarily what I want to do long term. So I pivoted and went into the financial services and insurance industry. Just kind of wanted more of like that 9 to 5, so I could have that work life balance, and then also um, get a little bit of that entrepreneurship from working with like an insurance branch and stuff like that. So did that for a while, and then had the opportunity this past fall to go back to Central as a graduate assistant. So doing that now, which basically work for my university, and by doing so, that helps me with having the financial opportunity to pursue my master's. So kind of like a weird thing where if you asked me like a couple of years ago, would I be getting my master's? I wouldn't expect it.
Mhm.
But just been grateful with some opportunities, and yeah, just with HR and leadership now, my master's just however I can help people and train and develop and help people achieve what they want in life. And I think beyond my academic and professional experience, that's just like my passion in general. And it goes back to psychology with just being super passionate about mental health, right? I mean, we're similar in age where I think it's fair to say that you've probably grown up where mental health wasn't something that was super on the forefront or talked about. And I think that the younger generation below us and even people like us are having more of those conversations. So using whatever platform I have to have mental health conversations or to talk about like just how important it is. And it's not anything to be ashamed of, or it's not anything that makes you weird, or it doesn't mean you have a problem or anything. Like, we all have this human experience, and we all go through this crazy thing we call life, and it's okay to struggle and not know like your place at times, but there's people that care, and there's a lot of resources out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I'm happy that it's more of a conversation now than it was in the past, because I feel like part of the issues of mental health are when people bottle them up inside and
Yeah,
don't share with people how they're feeling, and it just compounds everything. And the ability to have a conversation with someone is like a weight lifted off your shoulders.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, Rob, I think it even goes back to kind of how you were talking earlier about like if you didn't have your platform, like what would you be doing at this point? Like, you might be going crazy for not talking to people. And I think that this past year has shown us more than anything, like we need to have these connections and we need to talk about how we're feeling and what's going on in our lives, because I think as humans we all just want to have that connection and to feel heard and to hear others. And I think that it goes back to whether we're having just conversations where we're talking about what we're doing this weekend,
Mhm.
or talking about the more serious things, that we're not like bottling those up.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I found my project to be super helpful
Hmm.
in general, like as I've gone through the experience in the times, like there were times when after starting with like Deloitte salary, doing the project, I'd have like $500 to my name with
Yeah.
no promise of any money coming in on the horizon. And I found that I spoke more during my meetings about kind of that stress or just like about money in general. And
Yeah.
it was an outlet for me to get out of my head and just into the world. And then not like with the benefit of time, things work themselves out and effort and whatnot. But yeah, I think having a sounding off board is really important. And honestly, I think a lot of people like, I don't know why everyone chooses to be part of my project, but I think a lot of people like having the perfect stranger in a way, someone that they can talk to
Yeah.
and not worry about them like being in their specific circle and like treating them differently or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it kind of makes me think of like almost like having a counselor, like going to
Mhm.
like a single counseling session. Like
Yeah.
you don't know anything about these people, or I mean, even me, you don't know anything about me. So it's like I can talk to you in an open, honest way that you can't really say like, oh, like that doesn't align with something I know about Zach, or like you're just kind of that unbiased, person that isn't in my immediate circle that I can
Mhm.
get some feedback from or just share some inner thoughts with. So I think that's cool. And I mean, I love the message behind your project. And I think, again, just having those conversations is so important. Something that I'm huge on, and like I talk about on my podcast a lot, is the idea that every person and every opportunity, every situation in our lives is an opportunity to learn. We just have to be open to allowing it to be one. And I think about like all the times that we live in such like a hectic, fast-paced world. And granted, it's slowed down a little bit with the last year, but it's so easy to go through your day without actually having a conversation with people and actually connecting. Or like, it's like if you go out to a restaurant right now, I'm sure you would imagine it's like, hey, how are you doing? Good. You good? What do you want to eat? Just kind
Mhm.
of that basic, almost like we have a script. So I think like it's so important to actually have those deep conversations. And I think that that's what like your project has really allowed. It's like we're connecting on levels that go way beyond what a normal like day-to-day conversation would look like.
Mhm. I'm curious. So you said like AP psychology in high school was
Yeah.
the thing that made you fall in love with the psychology. What about it? Like, what about that class caught your interest?
I had a really good teacher. I had a really awesome teacher who was so passionate about psychology that really helped. And just learning that there's so much to it, right? Like, I think I had this kind of idea that psychology was just about mental health. Psychology or a psychology course is just about learning about like depression, anxiety, things like that. But there's just so much more to it. And there's so much that psychology is intertwined with. And that class was really the introduction to it. And through that class and through college, that's when I kind of discovered I have a really big passion for specifically social psychology. So essentially, why we do what we do. So it's really cool to see like human behavior, and even just like if we go to like a crowded, maybe these days it's not easy to, but a
Mhm.
crowded park or whatever, and you and I, or just me, like look up in the sky, the people around us are going to start doing that too. And it's like
Mhm.
we might not even be looking at anything, we might not be doing anything, but it's like, well, what's drawing them to that behavior? So I think that it's just like learning about how crazy our brains are and our minds are, and what can come out of that. That's what really drew me to psychology. So just knowing that there's so many different layers to it. And then kind of going back to our sports conversation, I've always loved sports. So learning about like the psychology of sports, and like how sports psychologists are a huge thing that are more prevalent these days. But just like even a big topic that I would talk about in college with one of my advisors, for psychology, sports psychology specifically, was Derrick Rose, and about how when he had all of his injuries with his knees, like the psychological hurdles that he had to overcome to come back and to play at the same level and have the same like aggressive style of play when he knew like he's torn his ACL or whatever it was multiple times. So I just think it's so cool. And really that's when I like got hit with the bug and I was like, wow, there's so much awesome stuff out here. And then it just over time it's grown, and even to this day, still super passionate about it.
Yeah. And so after you graduated,
Mhm.
you went into insurance, right? Because you were like,
Retail. First it was retail and then it was insurance.
oh, so you did go to Kohl's after school?
Yeah.
And
So, yep. So I was working with them through school. And then basically the internship I did my junior year going into senior year, at the end of that internship, they said, hey, you did awesome. We want to offer you a full-time job. So go
okay.
back to college, graduate, and then you have this job waiting for you. So I took that. So once I graduated, I did do that for, I want to say like a year and a half or so before then going into insurance.
Okay, gotcha. And then
Yeah.
how long did you spend in insurance?
Uh, about a year. So actually, retail was like a year, and then insurance for a year, and then now this past fall I went back to grad school.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I love Kohl's, by the way. Kohl's is
Right? It's a great
yeah.
place.
I'll like 90% of my clothes throughout life are from Kohl's.
Yeah.
I always joke, I'm like, they basically pay you to buy the clothes. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, with all the sales and the Kohl's Cash and stuff. And I would always tell people like it was the one place that like three generations of, family can go. You could have a kid and a parent and a grandparent, and like they could all go and everyone's gonna find something that they like.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember because they recruited from Penn State as well. So I remember
Yeah.
hearing about that program. And I'm trying to think back to why I have a memory of being in a Kohl's and like them talking about the internship and them like showing us why like how the towels are folded and placed in a specific way or things like
Yeah.
that. But I don't know why I would have like gone to a Kohl's or I can't remember like why I was that far in the process or whatever because I never
Right.
really like got into like serious interviews with them or anything. But
That's interesting. But
yeah.
yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I remember Penn State was a huge, huge recruiting campus for Kohl's.
Mhm.
And going into my senior year, when I had the opportunity to be a brand representative and to do the recruiting for my campus, and as it expanded throughout virtual recruiting through the Midwest, I went into the year just like, hey, where's Central at in terms of recruiting power? Just like how many um, interns we're getting and how many are converting to actually full-time managers after and stuff. And I think we're top 5 or something, maybe 3 or 4, but Penn State was actually the number 1 campus in the country. And I was like, we're gonna change that. So like that was my mission my senior year, to like dethrone Penn State. And we actually did. So we
Nice.
finished as the number 1 campus for recruiting that year. So that was, I feel like that was one of those moments in my life where I was like, I feel kind of going back to the power of the mind, like I told myself that like we're going to do this, and it wasn't just me by any means. It was the great help of the company and
Mhm.
all the people that applied and stuff. But just knowing that, like, I think that was one of the moments in my life where I realized if you set a goal, as cliche or cheesy as it sounds, like if you chase it and work hard and put in the time, like you can make anything happen. And it's just
Yeah.
really cool to see. And I think it that's been something that's helped me like to where I'm at now. Just like that mentality that anything can happen. Like you just have to put in the time and not like worry about comparing yourself to like the end result or even like others that are doing what you want to do, because everyone starts at page 1, right? So we get it's easy to get caught up in comparing like my chapter 1 to your chapter 20, but
Yeah.
we're all on a different journey and a different path, and just got to enjoy it and work hard towards it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's I've been thinking about that. Like as we graduate, we're all kind of in like a similar state. And then
Hmm.
like as I've seen with my path, how it's different from my friends, like
Yeah.
I've chosen to pursue this creative project and I've put dating and whatnot on hold and like having a house and having a car. And all of my other friends have gone in that direction of stability.
Hmm.
So and I'm lucky that my friends and I are very close with each other. So our differing paths doesn't change how close our relationship is. But it is interesting because you can sometimes get caught up in the comparison of like, wait, should I be at this point now because they're all there, or like, am
Hmm.
I falling behind, or am I ahead in any way, or am I on pace for what I'm supposed to be doing? And I feel like a lot of us can get in our own heads with that,
Yeah.
regardless of what we're doing.
Right. And I mean, how do you personally feel about that? Like seeing your friends and everything, what they're doing and where they're at 30 or maybe around 30. Like, do you feel like, man, I wish I was, in that position, or are you fully content and happy with where you're at right now?
I would say that it does impact me because I don't really care about society's traditional path, but I do
Right.
care about people closest to me. So I wouldn't say that I compare myself to them because I recognize that I'm on my own path,
Hmm.
but there are times of like going to a wedding, for example, like it's always all of my friends and then like with their wives and then me, but it's
Yeah.
always been that way. Um, but yeah, it's something that I think has an impact on me because I see it so often.
Okay.
But at the same time, what I say is like I would be miserable if I were in their past right now. Like
Yeah.
there's zero part of me that wants to be in a 9 to 5 job with a house and a kid and like no no idea of how to escape the 9 to 5 path. Like the wife
Hmm.
and kids are things that I want in my life, but I never wanted to work until I was 65 and then retire. And I'm also not like naive in thinking that it's not difficult to get away from that
Yeah.
because I've been doing this for 5.5 years. And to try to like create your own path and make enough money through your own thing that you can have a livable salary is extremely difficult. And I found
Hmm.
that through my project. But I'm more fulfilled by the problem solving the issue of how do I turn something that I love into a career, as opposed to the issue of like, how do I create an Excel model for this specific company thing? Like, I just doesn't, that piece doesn't click for me, but the
Yeah.
chasing like the entrepreneurship dream does.
I love that. That's awesome. And that's definitely where I would say I see myself too. Like I realize, the realism, if you will, of like having to, pay bills and all this stuff. So like,
Mhm.
you might have to do a 9 to 5 or for a couple of years or maybe for the majority of your life. But I think similar to yourself, I just had that urge to be creative and to do creative outlets and to not have that pressure
Mhm.
of working like that 9 to 5 and just like knowing you have to do what you have to do, but at the end of the day, like it's important to do what you truly love and want to do with your life because again, as cliche as it is, like we're only here for such, X
Mhm.
amount of time. It's important to do what we care about and to make our time worth it and to actually like live, right? To live our life and live in the moment and be present and enjoy what we have and to look forward to each day.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And what for you, what was the catalyst of going back to get your master's? And like at what point did you realize like, okay, this is something I'm gonna do?
Yeah, so always I've always liked learning. I can't really say I've always liked school because there's definitely been times in school where I'm like, oh man, I don't want to be here. But I've always liked to learn, and I'm actually a first generation college student. So even doing my undergrad was kind of something that was really important. And even just like in job interviews and stuff throughout my life, people are like, "What's something on your resume that you're most proud of?" And usually I say it's that I graduated from college. Just I take a lot of pride in that, especially as a first generation student. So education was always on the forefront, and I always dreamed of getting a master's growing up, like in high school and early college, because I didn't really think it was possible. I didn't really see it being possible from a financial perspective. I didn't really see it being possible from like an imposter syndrome, like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough to get it. Um, so it kind of was always something that I wanted to do to prove to myself that I could, but also just knowing that that could open up some more doors and opportunities from a career perspective as well. Because I think where I'm at, I would love to find a job that I could work with some stability and income for the next 5, 7 years of my life, and then have enough accumulated where then I could go out on my own and do more creative endeavors and things that I actually want to do without having that pressure of maybe financial. limits and stuff. So I'd say that was like the main kind of catalyst. And then when the opportunity came up, I wasn't, like it was probably back December 2019, yeah, and like January 2020, when I was like, I'm not even really thinking about it, but then I just like started like seeing like these openings for my university. I was like, I know the school really well. I'm really passionate about education, and like the specific area that I'm doing my assistantship for is student affairs. So kind of just the student experience. So I was like, I super passionate about that too. So let's just try it. And ended up applying, getting in, and I figured it was just one of those things where right time at right place, and just feeling very lucky and fortunate. So I
Yeah.
don't know if that really answers it, but that's kind of, what sparked going back.
No, that's cool. And what like the creative things that you want to work on,
Mhm.
do you know what they are?
Yeah, so I just love being able to connect with people in creative ways. So I mentioned I've written a few books. So I've written and published those. Those are more so in like kind of like the self-help kind of space. First book I did was quotes. It was all quotes from famous people or successful people, whatever you want to call them, that really helped inspire or empower me in my life. So a quote for each day of the year, and then like a little blurb about what that quote means to me, or what maybe a daily goal could be surrounding that. That was my first book. My second one was all original poetry. So that focuses on the highs, the lows, and the in-betweens of life. So all those different phases that we go through, that we talk about the highs, we talk about the lows sometimes, but we don't really talk about the in-betweens of life. And that's so much of our lives, right? Like we're just kind of like going and just along our path. So I want to shed some light on that. And with the style of poetry that I wrote, it was where it was based on my life or the life of people in mine. But I wanted, even like you, Rob, to be able to read it and be like, wow, that reminds me of this time or this experience in my life. So I like to make it kind of like specific, but also vague, where it can relate to anyone. And then the most recent book is about leadership. So just what I've learned in my journey of professionalism about how to be a impactful leader. So writing has always been a big outlet to me. So that's one of the big creative, excuse me, creative endeavors for me. Music. I've always been really passionate about music. So I had some experience growing up in like choir and like school chorus, church, and stuff like that. But I wouldn't consider myself like a singer by any means. But I've
Okay.
always enjoyed it. But then taught myself the ukulele, guitar, very, very, very minimal piano. Um, Played saxophone in band in middle school and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
just like being able to be creative with music. And recently I've been dabbling in with they're called MIDI controllers. They're like you plug them into your laptop and you can make music and stuff.
Is that where you just like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I have like I got this one that
oh
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
just like play, and then one that's more like traditional keyboard. So you can kind of like play like a keyboard, and you can make it play like drum sounds with
Hmm.
pushing keys and stuff. So just that's more like music production and stuff. But I just found it's a good way to kind of express myself, and just to also work with other people that maybe are more so serious about their singing or
Hmm.
whatever. If I can like create music for them or write music for them, that's something that is really cool. So music, other creative endeavors, the podcast has been the big one. Just just really, I think the driver for the creative side of me is just to be able to, I always say my life mission is to inspire and empower people. So however I can do that. And I think for me, it's been like the creative things that I mentioned are passions for me. So if I can do my passion and show someone else that they can do theirs, I feel like that's what's impactful for me. And that's why I want to be creative and what fuels me to be creative. Because like, I mean, I don't think I can sing. And I'm sure other like people that have that background would say like, yeah, you're not a singer. But if I can post like a 30-second clip on Instagram or something, and that inspires someone to go try something new or to step out of their comfort zone, like, and be creative in their own way, I think that
Hmm.
that's completely worth it for me.
Yeah, that's cool. It's called a MIDI, right? A MIDI.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
kid from Philly who's really good at that. His Instagram is odd kid out.
Okay.
And he's always like making new beats with it and stuff. And
Yeah.
then like Madion. I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Okay.
He's like a electronic artist. He toured with Porter Robinson.
Okay.
But I recognize it through like some of the electronic musicians that I listen to.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Who are your style of musicians? Like, who do you listen to?
Yeah, it's actually funny because I was looking at and listening to some of your connections that you've made on your Instagram that you posted about, and there was one who posted about listening to a podcast by Mike, the artist Mike,
Mm-hmm.
the You Never Know podcast
Mm-hmm.
with the featured Larry King, and that's actually Mike is actually probably one of my favorite artists.
Nice.
So he inspired me because his career, he was a baseball player at Duke, and then blew out his elbow, and then went to music. And that was like around the same time that I was transitioning out of baseball. So I felt like that really connected. And so I'd say that was a big like influence. And then just like for my music style, now I would say it's very much more kind of like indie folk kind of feel. So I definitely like to kind of like write and play that kind of music, but I just love music in general. So like I'll listen to anything. If you have any good suggestions, let me know.
Yeah.
But like I mean electronic music kind of like with the MIDI stuff, but the folk stuff I like, hip hop I think is really cool, and it aligns a lot with like poetry,
Mm-hmm.
and like kind of spoken word poetry, and um, pop, just put it on what's on the radio and stuff like that, singer songwriter stuff. So
Yeah.
I'd say I'm all over the place. But what about you? Like, what's your kind of music taste?
I like pop, hip hop, EDM,
Okay.
acoustic,
Yeah.
oldies, but things that like right now I'm listening to like Joyner Lucas remixes
Yeah.
on YouTube, and like his rap battle between him and Tory Lanez. I go back
Yeah.
to that a lot because I just think it's great rap. But
Yeah.
yeah, Joyner Lucas, Eminem, Drake, J. Cole was like in the hip hop area, or like
Yeah.
Hobson, Logic lyricists.
Yeah. Okay.
And then electronic, I don't even like um what's her name? I picture their Galantis is
Yep.
up, or like Major Lazer, Odessa,
Hmm.
um, RL Grime, artists like that. And then
Okay.
uh, guitars like Jack Johnson, John Mayer, Dave Matthews Band, Jason
Yeah.
Mraz, like diving into indie like the Lumineers or
Yep.
people like that. And oldies is like Frank Sinatra, the Beach Boys, like Frank
Yeah.
Medallion, the Four Seasons.
Some good
But
classics.
yeah, but pop, I like my favorite artist, I think, is John Bellion.
Okay.
Are you familiar with him?
Yeah. Yep. It's got some
Yeah,
good stuff for sure.
I think he's like a genius. He has, if you haven't seen him, he has making of videos of his music
Okay.
on his YouTube channel.
Okay.
So just to what like you can see how passionate he is about music.
Yeah.
And I love how kind of behind the scenes he is, because he has his own stuff, but then he wrote and produced a lot of the songs on Justin Bieber's most recent album. Like
Okay.
that song Holy with Justin Bieber and Chance the Rapper
Yeah.
is from John Bellion, but like most people don't know that.
Yeah. I
Uh,
didn't know that.
and then hand in hand with him is AJR. They're
Okay.
right up there for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's really cool to see like that artistry, and you mentioned Logic. I stumbled on like he's posted kind of a bit on YouTube about like his writing process, and like there was a video that I watched that like he was on like a Twitch stream or something, and he was like breaking down like he took What's Poppin' by Jack Harlow, and
Oh, okay.
basically just like took the beat and wrote a song on it, and showed like the way that he thinks and the way that he would like go about that writing process. And I just think like kind of related back to like how I was mentioning like watching athletes perform at a high level, like anyone, like watching anyone do something that they're really good at and really passionate about, I think is just so cool. And just to see it and be like, wow, like that's how they think through that process and stuff. And I'll definitely have to check out um everything that you've mentioned with the artists and stuff, and kind of see some of that inside stuff.
Yeah, it's fun. And if you had to pick one creative area to focus on, which one would it be?
Whew. If I had to pick one, I would probably say the podcasting space. I've definitely gotten really heavy into it, and just I don't have the biggest platform or anything. I'm not, an influencer or anything by any means, but just the reception that I've gotten so far from friends that I talk to regularly, from people that I haven't talked to in years, and from even strangers, just saying like, by having like an open and honest conversation with these people, it was impactful, or it changed my perspective on something. That's been the most rewarding thing. And just like, so far the people I've talked to have just been phenomenal people that I'm so blessed to say that are a part of my personal life, and just to see them getting like recognition or love or support has been super uplifting to me. So if I had to focus on one, I would say the podcast for sure.
Nice. Now, how
Yeah.
many episodes have you put out so far?
I've put out 3. So the first episode was just an introduction about what it's about and what to expect. And then that was just me by myself. And then every episode is going to have a guest. So I put out 2 guest episodes, and I put it out every Monday. So this coming Monday will be my 3rd.
Nice.
Oh, well, 4th, I guess, technically, but 3rd with a guest.
Yeah. And so Mike has his own podcast, right?
He does, yeah.
Is he an inspiration from a podcast perspective?
I would say a little bit. His podcast, and I don't know if you talked much about it, but it's kind of similar, just like talking to people, about like their successes, and kind of like his gets very like spiritual and mindset driven. But I would say just like that idea of having a conversation with people, I think was really big. I love the TV show Community.
Mm-hmm.
So like at the start, I want to say of the pandemic, Joel McHale and Ken Jeong had a podcast called The Darkest Timeline, where they basically just like, it was more so comedic, but they just talked to each other back and forth, and would have guests on. And that was a big thing that I was like, wow, I'm not doing much these days because there's not much to do. And it was kind of like a good escape just to hear people talk about life or their experiences. So I would say Mike, and then The Darkest Timeline with Ken Jeong and Joel McHale is really kind of what got me into like, oh, podcasts are pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I try doing that?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And are they like your biggest inspiration now? Are there like others that you've come across and been like, now this one is inspiring to me? Like, who are you paying attention to?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, so the community podcast, The Darkest Timeline, that one stopped a while ago.
Okay.
I think they just like got busy or something as things started to reopen. So that hasn't really been anything I've listened to or focused on. But like the Mike podcast is like bi-weekly, so I keep up with that. And he started a second one with Johnny Manziel, the former football player, where they talk more so about like Johnny's journey and stuff like that, and mindset. And that's one that I've been kind of following along with. But it's weird because I love podcasts, but I don't spend too much time listening to them, really. It's just kind of like, oh, this one sounds really cool, like I'm going to listen to it, or someone sends me one. So I don't really follow too much along with them. But a friend of mine actually started one yesterday.
Okay.
She started one. Her name's Riley, and she was actually the first guest on my podcast. And she's a singer-songwriter.
Nice.
And that podcast, that one really inspired me, just because it was like, the premise of it was like it was like 14 minutes, and she recorded it at like 4:30 in the morning after having like a panic attack and going on like a night drive, and just talking about like the importance of like mental health and taking care of ourselves. And like, I really resonated with it, because like it was the idea that sometimes we like say yes to so many things, but it drains from us, and like we can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
So it just really resonated with me. So I mean, other than being a friend of mine, I definitely want to listen to that one whenever I can, whenever there's uploads and stuff. So that's going to be one that I think is going to inspire me along this path.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm just curious, you mentioned like you would like to have like some job within your field of like a flexible job to help pay the bills and whatnot.
Yeah.
What would be like the dream job within your field?
Yeah. So I would say the dream job would be something along the lines of consultant work, or just like if I could go to companies and observe what's going on, and then see how I can help them become more efficient, more effective, create training programs, or develop different sessions that will help whether it's like leadership or team chemistry and cohesion or whatever,
Hmm.
to do that kind of consulting, or like contract consulting, the sense of like, we need to hire a mass amount of people. Will you come in and interview, screen, whatever we need for that
Hmm.
process? I would say that would be kind of like the big like dream that I would have. Also within the last about a year and a half, 2 years, um, one of my good friends, he started a fitness company and I've joined on since then. So him and I are partners with it, and we run it. And basically it's an online fitness community that brings personal training virtually to clients. And my role with that company is HR. So I'm the chief human resource officer for that. So that would be another thing that I would love to do. That would be, the perfect world situation where I can just do that kind of like full time, where it's like kind of working for yourself and having your own company, but being able to make like a livable income off of it as well.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah,
What was it? There's something I was going to ask about. Oh, are you in school full time right now?
I am. Yeah. So
Okay.
I just finished last week. So it is summer for me now. But
Oh,
yeah, I have one more year and then I am a full time student during the school year.
okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And yeah, I want to leave room for you to ask anything if you've been curious about it, because I know we're coming down to the end here.
Oh, for sure. Um, I mean, what inspired you to do your project? And I mean, it sounds like you're just a creative person in general. So where did that come from in your life?
It came from my time at Penn State mainly. Like I've
Okay.
always had an interest in entrepreneurship, and I've always been an extrovert. So when I got to Penn State, one of the things I was most excited about was the ability to meet people. And kind of like I said, like I shifted away from sports and into extracurriculars. So I did the Penn State Dance Marathon, which is like this big fundraiser for the fight
Yeah.
against pediatric cancer. Um, I did a fraternity I joined spring of freshman year. I became a tour guide my sophomore year, and we would also put on events around campus. And then a homecoming captain my junior year, and I also did Habitat for Humanity trips um, over spring breaks. So it was that involvement that led me to make like a lot of different friendships, and they were the biggest driver of my satisfaction when I was a student. And I knew that academics were important, but I also knew that the social relationships were really important. So I
Yeah.
never let one get in the way of the other. And now being 8 years out of school, I can be like, it was the people that were more valuable, that I've gained more value from over the years than the degree. Even though the degree led me to join Deloitte, which gave me like the savings to be able to take a risk like
Mhm.
this and the comfort that I could fall back on something. But yeah, it was having that experience and then going from this community to this consulting world and being like, I feel like I'm not meeting anyone new. And I feel
Yeah.
like it's really difficult to do that. And that combined with the looking at my career and being like, I don't want to do this until I'm 65 years old. So all of those things together is what inspired me to start. And I always wanted to showcase like a positive example of human connection. Like I
Mhm.
really like when I talk to people and we look completely different from each other, because it's
Right.
like oftentimes all you hear in the news is like these people hate each other, this, that, war, whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like, how about these two people that are like totally different religions or backgrounds or ethnicities and had like a really pleasant chat with each other? So that is something like I like being kind of the opposite storyline of what you see in the news.
Mhm.
And I want to encourage other people to do that same thing and like not feel like everyone outside of their circle is crazy or that everyone
Right.
outside of their circle is dangerous. Um, and yeah, I'm always just also just in general a big believer in the potential that each human interaction holds. And you said the same thing, like
Yeah.
there's so much value that you can get out of any like spontaneous interaction,
Mhm.
especially if you keep your eyes open for it. And
Yeah.
I've always believed that. So that's what drives me still to this day is like it's easy for me to wake up and meet four new people every day if I believe that anything could come of that. And
Right.
it could be I learned a new piece of information that I don't apply to my life until 10 years from now. Or it could be that they open a door for me that I can walk through next week. But it's like every interaction holds that potential if you're willing to look for that value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. And, I mean, through your journey and just your project, you have to kind of have that extrovertedness to like be to want to put yourself out there to meet so many people and to have those interactions. Do you have any advice to people who maybe struggle with communicating or having conversations with people, or opening up to get to that point where they can have those conversations with maybe people in general, but also maybe people from different backgrounds?
I think that honestly, the best way that people can do it, and I think it's going to sound silly, is to set a goal for themselves. Like,
Okay.
if your New Year's resolution, or like you have a personal goal, just a set goal to meet one new person every month, then it's like going to the gym. Like,
Yeah.
people think it's so normal to go to the gym 3 days a week, but then you're like, oh, meet one new person a month, and people are like, that's crazy. Why would I do that?
Right.
Uh, but it's like, because you could get all of this value out of it, and you can increase your perspective of the world, and you can become more comfortable with conversation. And I think specifically for people who aren't comfortable with it, okay, you might not be comfortable with conversations 1 through 10, but by 11, you're going to be like, oh, I've got the hang of this. Like, now I
Yeah.
have some libraries of topics that I can choose from. I'm not as anxious that I'm going to run out of topics to talk about.
Hmm.
I can't relate to this person through my story, but this other person told me a story that reminds me of them. So the more conversations you have, the more you build your toolbox of how to have better conversations in the future. And I think the best way you can do that is by making it a routine. And it doesn't have to be like, okay, 1 hour one-on-one with every
Right.
person. It can be 10 minutes, it can be whatever.
Yeah.
But I think having that goal is really important for the discipline factor,
Hmm.
and also giving yourself that space to not be an expert immediately. Because I think people be like, well, I went in the conversation, I was anxious, I stumbled, I was terrible at
Yeah.
it, I'm not going to embarrass myself like that again.
Right.
But if you build that into your expectation, then you're like, okay, cool. Like, I felt a little nervous going into it. I did stumble. That's okay. Like, I'll get it next time.
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah, that's my advice.
Gotcha. I know we're at our time. Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. So, your project, Rob's 10K Friends. What happens when you hit 10K?
I think what happens when I hit 10K is I would like to shift into like education. Not
Okay.
not like, I just want to become a professor at a university where I run a course for first year students where they pair off one on one and learn from each other's backgrounds as opposed to a textbook or a PowerPoint,
Hmm.
because I want them to have that empathy and that perspective, but also a safe, like, built in space where they know they're going to meet other students. Because at a school like yours or mine, it could be intimidating
Hmm.
to freshmen to be like, I'm not a social person, so I'm not going to go out and put myself out there because it makes me nervous. But those things are so valuable to the time that students have. So I want to just be like, hey, the purpose of this course is for you to learn how to better tell your story and learn the stories of your classmates. And hopefully, what you'll get out of it is more perspective, more empathy, and connections that you can foster over the next 4 years and beyond. And that's really where see myself settling into, along with public speaking at like schools and whatnot. Um, I did a TEDx talk at Emory University last month, and that was really cool. And then the day after, I did a speech at the University of Washington for a global conference that they have. And
Okay.
so I see myself moving into that space now as a way of supporting myself, but also um, in the future as well, because I think, like, it's cool for me to have all this knowledge and perspective, but what does it mean for everyone else unless I'm willing to share it with them? So I want to like start tapping into that. And then wife and kids is from a personal standpoint.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I was gonna say, since you work in student affairs, if you have
Mhm.
anyone there that I could connect with, I would love to talk to them, because I've done like a seminar that I was doing on my own, but I've done it for a couple of other groups of people and they've really enjoyed it. And I think that that is what I want to start spreading at universities.
Yeah, definitely. I will look through my connections and network and see if there's any way I can get you in touch with. But even just thinking about that, like the project that I'm working on is how can we improve student well-being on campus.
Mhm.
So, and I mean, I think what you do, what you talk about, what you're knowledgeable on is a lot to do with our own well-being. So,
Yeah.
to kind of tap into your experience or even potentially see if we can arrange a way for you to speak,
Yeah.
to some of our students or something. I think your mission is very powerful work, and just hearing that, I think that that's awesome. And I would love to have like a class like that as a freshman, or to see that become like the norm in academic settings. So
Mhm.
I definitely am cheering you on with that, and I'm excited to see what you end up doing with it.
Sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of
I
course.
appreciate it, man. And obviously, like I said, it seems like you have a very similar mindset. You value human connection in an equal way. So good luck with the growth of your podcast and
Thank you.
all of the creative endeavors that you have ahead.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. It's been great getting to chat with you and get to know you. And I'm happy to be able to call you a friend. And if there's ever any way that I can help you, support you, make your life easier in any way, let me know. I'm happy to do whatever I can.
Yes, likewise.